Hello everyone and welcome back to the Belgian Beer Brothers channel. My name is Cedric and today we're gonna talk about number 8 out of 10 in the Toer de Geuze home box, the Oude Geuze Boon. This is what you might call an absolute classic, and the beer as well as the brewery has a lot of history and is actually history in the making as well. This is probably known as the best Geuze in the world. It's not the oldest by far, but it's mostly known as the best one, and its maker, Frank Boon, is also known as the Pope of Geuze or the Savior of Geuze, but we'll talk about that in more detail later on. But let's talk about the brewery first. I said this is a brewery with a lot of history, and basically it dates back to 1680, so the 17th century, when Jean-Baptiste Claes starts a gin distillery in Lembeek. Lembeek is a city, or more like a town near Brussels, and the Zen, the river that basically holds all the bacteria and the yeast strains that ferment the Geuze or the Lambic to what it is, lives there. And Lembeek, you might hear Lambic in there, and that's actually where the name Lambic comes from. It's tied to the name Lembeek. But back in those days, in 1680, Lembeek was a free city, and free city means that there were no taxes on, amongst other things, alcohol. And no taxes meant great profits. And Jean-Baptiste Claes had some good profits. He had a flowering business, and he decided to start brewing as well. So he built a brewery in Honsocht, which is 2 miles north of the current brewery in Lembeek. Now, after the French Revolution, several years later, taxes are due, and brewing and distilling is a lot less profitable back from that time on. So in 1809, Claes rents out the brewery. He keeps the still, but he rents out the brewery to another Jean-Baptiste called Jean-Baptiste Paul. Now, of course, this is 130 years after the start of it all. But Jean-Baptiste Paul starts brewing in his brewery in Honsocht. Now, in 1860, another 50 years later, his son Louis Paul buys the buildings and starts Brasserie Saint-Roch. And he starts brewing Lambic and blending Geuze. That's the start of the Geuze story on this location, so 1860. In 1898, the family Paul leaves the brewery, and the family Troch buys it. And they start investing heavily. They even install one of the first steam machines in the brewery, and they upscale the capacity. Yet, this is 1898, so 15 years later the First World War breaks out, and as we've heard before in other stories of other breweries, all the copper gets confiscated, so they lose their kettles and they can't brew anymore during that time. So after the war, they restart the brewery, they install new kettles and all, but there's still a crisis, a financial crisis or a recession, and the family De Troch, or the brewery rather, goes bankrupt, which is again a bloody shame. Then siblings René and Jeanne Wits, not De Wits, buy the brewery, but they stop brewing immediately and they become blenders. They hardly make any investments for decades in the brewery, and they end up with a production of only about 150 hectoliters a year, which is not that much. Then in 1978, so they kept it up for 50 years, but in 1978 René and Jeanne retire, and along comes a 25-year-old motivated lad called Frank Boon. And although he's only 25 years old, he buys the brewery. He takes a giant leap of faith. He buys the brewery, and yeah, this was a huge leap of faith, because you have to understand that back in those days, the 1970s and 80s, more and more Geuze breweries and blenderies go bankrupt or don't find succession in their family, so they're all disappearing like ice melting for the sun. The story of Frank Boon, like I said, they call him the savior of Geuze, and that's because of this. You see, in 1972, 75, somewhere around there, Frank starts out as a small town Geuze blender in his cellar at home, and yeah, small time beer salesman. And then in 1977 he finds a perfect blend. He called it a perfect marriage between three lambic brews, and he called it the mariage parfait, which is French for the perfect marriage. Pardon me. Immediately people acknowledged that Frank had a talent. And in 1978, so 1 year after that, he buys the Wits brewery in Honsocht. He starts brewing there, and things go rather well. But in the 1980s, somewhere mid-80s, I couldn't find the exact year, an old steel factory or steel mill back in Lembeek goes bankrupt, and he got the chance to buy the site, and this site actually stretches over both sides of La Seine, the river, and it has several warehouses and a lot of room, a lot of space. So he repurposes the buildings and puts in a brewery and some warehouses. And then in 1990, the first brew comes out of the new brewery. Originally, because he was a young guy and didn't have all the money in the world, he made a deal with Palm Brewery or Diepenstaan, and they got a 50% share as long as they took care of all the distribution. This deal held up until 2016, so you might find in some literature that Brewery Boon is still owned for 50% by Palm, but that's not true anymore since 2016. Boon was so successful that his production rose from around 450 hectoliters in 1990 to a whopping 21,000 hectoliters in 2016. And there's a story behind that as well, because Frank invested heavily in the brewery, and he is a brewing genius, so people acknowledged his talent, his quality product, and yeah, things just came together. For example, he already had a bunch of foeders, the huge oak barrels, and in 2000 he installed 19 extra foeders of around 65 to 80 hectoliters each, and he already had 17 of them before that. So yeah, he more than doubled his aging capacity. In 2011 he built a third warehouse, and in total in 2011 he has over 130 foeders, and the largest ones are up to 125 hectoliters. Then in 2013 more and more and more investments were made, and basically he built a whole new brewery, a new brew house, a new installation, everything, and he more than doubled the capacity. The new brewery had 2.5 times the capacity of the old one. On top of that, it's optimized for lambic brewing, so they do brew some other beers, mainly Duivel's beer, a dark beer, but it's optimized for lambic brewing, and the new brewery uses 70% less energy, so it's a lot more energy efficient, a lot cheaper to brew as well. In 2018 they built a fourth warehouse, putting in 40 new foeders that are each about 4 meters high and up to 250 hectoliters large. In 2021, so last year in November, Frank finally decided to retire, although he said he was retired for a few years already. But in 2021 in November he officially retires, and his sons Jos and Karel. Jos is a bioengineer specialized in brewing and malting and yeast, and Karel is an economist, and the two brothers take over the brewery with the Boon name. Now Frank is still active in the brewery, of course, and the two boys grew up next to the brewery because they literally lived next to the brewery. So I dare say it's in good hands. Now currently Boon brews about 10 different beers, all the different geuzes, Kriek, Mariage Parfait, Duivel's beer, under their own name, but they also brew a huge amount of lambic beer for other blenderies and geuzes takers. They export to somewhere between 30 and 40 countries, and currently they have over 2.5 million liters of lambic aging in a total of 161 oak foeders. Also Frank learned the trade as a cooper, so he makes his own barrels, his own foeders, he restores them, he even teaches that. And the 2.5 million liters of lambic aging is an absolute world record. If you get the chance, I visited the brewery, if you get the chance, really go there, take the tour, have a taste. They, I believe, a few years ago, I can't say which year, their VAT 31, VAT 31, Foeder 31, monoblend was named the best geuz in the world, and actually their black labels and their monoblends are freaking awesome. I have some of those in stock, and we will be talking about those in some later videos. But without further ado, let's have a taste. A small detail here, this is the classic 37.5 centiliter champagne bottle, Geuze 7% ABV. It keeps until 2041, and on the neck label here you can see the brewing season. Now the brewing season spans from around October until February, March, so it spans over 2 years, and this is brewing season 2018-2019 and bottled in 2021. It has a lovely muselet with the Boon logo, and for today I ditched the Toer de Geuze glass and I got myself a lovely Geuze Boon glass. Now I did discover that I had no Geuze Boon glass except for the degustation glasses, so this was kindly donated by the owner of my favorite bar, Artichoke, here in Antwerp, so I can drink my Oude Geuze Boon in the proper glassware. Now, Geuze Boon is known as a tender geuze, a very well balanced geuze as well. And it should be fresh, refreshing, fruity. Already smells rather tender. Yeah, got some hay, some stable. Very active, a lot of foam, somewhere between white and off-white. Very tiny bubbles, and again a lovely color. It's a bit lighter than most. It's golden yellow, like a sunset. I get a very, next to the hay and the stable, I get a very fruity, citrusy aroma. Slightly woody. It's not aggressive at all. I get a certain level of acidity in the nose, but it's not aggressive. It's rather lemony. Right off the bat, that first taste is very, sour nonetheless. Again, not too aggressive. It's rather dry sour, very lemony as well. Get a lot of citrus there, a lot of lemon and grapefruit. Some woody notes. I've heard people say they taste peach in a Geuze Boon. Honestly, I haven't. But it does have a very fruity bouquet. The more I taste, the more I get some, obviously the grapefruit, a sharp bitterness, very refreshing, very thirst quenching. I do get why this is the instant classic, and I do get a very tiny hint of vanilla. It's not sweet, just more in the aftertaste or in the roof of the mouth. I get the tiny hint of vanilla, but that's probably because of the oak. Yeah, and if I let the aroma go around to the nose, I get more like nutty, woody flavors. Again, I do believe this is maybe not the easiest geuze to drink, but I do believe this is the most balanced geuze. Now, of course, I am a fan of Brewery Boon, of Frank Boon, and as you see, I installed a new plate today that I brought from my visit to Brewery Boon. Together with this glass, my collection is expanding a tiny bit more. Alright, guys, I'm gonna leave it at that. As usual, if you like this video, If you have any questions, any remarks, any ideas, comment down below. If you want to see more on this channel, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you'll get notified when I put something online. And yeah, let's meet each other back here tomorrow for the next Geus. We still have Lindemans and Timmermans to go, both breweries that require a lot of research because they both have a huge history. So I still have some work cut out for me, and I will do that with pleasure. I'm gonna enjoy this a bit more with my dinner, and I'll see you guys again in the next video. Cheers, you guys.